everyone, my name is Chayce Floyd, and this is my class presentation for ISCI 704, Leadership and Information Organizations. Today, we are going to be focusing on conflict resolution between LIS professionals. So to start, we will consider what makes an employee toxic, and then what we'll look at is what makes a poor leader. After that, we will address some effective strategies for managing workplace conflict, and we'll analyze some challenges that you might encounter in your own workplace. But first, we must consider, why does conflict happen in the workplace in the first place? Joshua and Suleiman define conflict as the active striving for one's own preferred outcome, which, if attained, precludes the attainment by others of their own preferred outcome, thereby producing hostility, which basically means someone is putting their goals and needs above everyone else in the workplace, and this just does not work in an organization. This can include information that is not properly understood and well managed, organizational crises, and issues related to technology, workload, budget, and burnout. So, it is said that interpersonal conflict ranks the highest as the type of conflict experienced in libraries. So, let's look at some characteristics of toxic employees. These types of employees will often have goals that challenge intellectual freedom, which means they might not fully understand what it means to be a library worker. This can often be attributed to employees who are not librarians and employees who have fallen behind on professional development training. Workplace bullying is also a huge issue that is often overlooked. However, studies show that 27% of library employees have experienced offensive behavior of some kind at the hand of a coworker, and 4% of those encounters have turned physically violent. Finally, many toxic employees will participate in counterproductive behaviors such as chronic complaining, avoidance of work, and withdrawal from coworkers. This makes them not that pleasant to be around and causes some poor employee characteristics. Now, let's look at some characteristics of poor leadership. First, poor leaders will often have an external locus of control. This means they are not focused on taking care of their employees because they do not believe those actions will lead to valued reinforcement for themselves. Instead, they focus on outside factors as beneficial, such as the organization's financials and a desire for recognition from higher-ups in the organization. Because of this, they also tend to fall short on policy implementation. They will often forego confidentiality agreements to build relationships with others, but they don't understand or they don't realize or they don't care how that affects their relationships with those below them. This can then result in a lack of trust from both parties. Employees don't feel like they can trust their leader, but their leader doesn't trust anyone either because they're out for their own benefit. And finally, poor leaders tend to have a pessimistic point of view, refusing to acknowledge conflict and domineering over their employees as an attempt to gain respect. Nobody respects a domineering leader. So, let's look at some strategies for managing possible conflict between employees and leaders. Are we doomed? Not necessarily. Leaders should attempt to empower their employees by implementing de-escalation training that enhances communication, promotes skill building, helps develop staff rapport, and encourages curiosity and conflict instead of competition. Both employees and leaders need to remain flexible in expectations to target conflict as it emerges, not after it's been built. It's also important to build your own active awareness. Individuals who know themselves will be able to recognize their triggers before they escalate. And finally, leaders should work with their employees to troubleshoot conflict together, rather than expecting one person to solve it. This will help them repair their relationship and combat competition. However, no solution is one size fits all, so we must address some challenges that may arise. To start, a divided staff will struggle to agree on certain topics. An intergenerational work environment is crucial for a well-rounded workforce, but they may experience conflicting values and methods. Additional responsibilities, such as social work to homeless populations, can add undue stress on employees and make them more irritable. Professional development is also an added responsibility that employees may not feel like they have time for. But a leader that encourages trainings and works with employees' workload will soon see the benefits. Another challenge is when leaders fail to lead. Managing employees will not bring any progress in workplace conflict, which will then lead to dysfunction and lower quality decision making across the board. Library leadership often allocates over 20% of their time to managing library conflict. If they focused on a proactive approach, this significant amount of time could be lowered. And finally, conflicting understandings of the library are unavoidable. Employees will not always agree on issues regarding access to information, especially if they are not certified librarians themselves. Leaders must ensure these library standards are effectively presented and upheld for every employee to follow without exception. That is all I have for you today. This slide shows my references, and this was a brief overview on conflict resolution between LIS professionals. Now, of course, none of these solutions will work immediately, and it's important to not implement too many changes all at one time. Not only will many employees be resistant to this influx of change, but it also makes the changes less likely to last because it's so hard to get used to so many changes at one time. Start small and stay persistent. I also recommend discussing possible changes with your employees prior to implementing them. It's important that they feel like they are part of the process and that their opinion is valued by their supervisor. I thank you all for watching, and I hope we can all become effective LIS leaders one day.